Hi, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of Malice in the Mitten. I am your host, Tracy Preston, along with my bestie, Christine Mulligan. Hey, Christine.
Hey, Trace. What are we getting into today?
Well, do you remember the story that we did on Dominic Picone? It was like in the mid to late 1940s, and that story was researched and written by Rebecca Hiers. Well, today's story is one hell of a tie-in. So I want to say thanks, Rebecca. This is a nutty story, and I cannot believe how these are interrelated. So, are you ready to hear it?
All right, let's go. Is this the one that went real crazy, like the one where he just went on a rampage and it was bananas?
Yeah, Dominic Picone. Yeah, he was like shooting up everybody and...
All right, well, I'm buckled up. I have a feeling this is going to be a wild one, too.
It really is. It's totally bonkers. Okay, so let's get into it. This is Season 6, Episode 19, Warren Lee Irwin. Cassius Barber glanced around his farm with a feeling of pride. He watched his newest lodger across the field as he worked. He and his wife were doing a good thing here, and he knew it. Despite the unpleasantness last year with that Picone boy, he knew they were making a difference in the lives of young boys headed in the wrong direction. A staunch Catholic, he embraced the idea of doing good works as a testament to his faith. One part of that was taking in troubled boys, teaching them the wholesome ways of farm life, and showing them how to become productive, not destructive members of society.
Okay, so right off the bat, I have to ask, did we mention this guy in the Picone story? Because I don't really remember talking about Picone having foster parents, but I'm assuming that's what this guy was?
Well, kind of, sort of, not really. So yes, we did talk about Cassius. So Dominic, when he was 11, because he was so out of control, his parents sent him to live on the farm with Cassius. So this is when Picone got in trouble with Cassius because he wasn't feeding the pigs enough. So,
oh, yeah. Okay, I remember.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Yep.
All right, I made the connection now. So, okay. So what happens now? He's got more drama? This poor fool.
I know, it's just bonkers. It's bonkers. All right, so over the years, a number of troubled boys had found their way to the farm, and most had been success stories. Picone had been an anomaly when he beat and kidnapped that teacher last year, but he was serving his time now in Jackson Prison, and hopefully he would learn something good there. Well, we all know how that turned out. The young man Cassius was watching was named Warren Lee Irwin. It was 1940, and 16-year-old Irwin had a more troubled background than most of the boys that came to the farm. Born in Nebraska in 1924, the young man's father, Carl, committed suicide rather than go to federal prison when Warren was only 10. His father, a postal worker, had been accused of stealing money from the mail, which, as we all know, is a federal offense. Shortly after, his grieving mother had moved them to Detroit, where she opened a rooming house in order to make money and give them a fresh start away from the horrible memories. However well-intentioned, it hadn't worked. Young Warren had been in and out of trouble since before the move. He had started close to home, stealing money from his mother, and had moved on to bigger and more lucrative targets. With an IQ of 130, near genius level, the boy could have been a success at anything he chose to do. However, he chose a life of crime instead of anything productive. In 1938, he had been sentenced to serve time in the state's juvenile detention center for auto theft and stealing. As a part of his parole, he had been sent to the farm in 1940. Much like Dominic Picone before him, he wouldn't learn much during his time at the farm, despite the hopes of Cassius. In 1941, Irwin would be sent back to prison for auto theft with a 2 to 5 year sentence. Paroled in 1942, he would head back to Southern Michigan prison in 1943 for breaking and entering and being a habitual criminal. Sentenced to 7 years, he would get an extra 7 to 22 years for deviant sex while in there. Irwin was paroled after serving 7 years in 1950, and this is when he went back into his mother's care. He was only 26 years old. For about 13 months, it seemed like maybe his time behind bars had changed the young man. Now 27, he had a studious demeanor about him. Nearsighted, he wore rimless glasses on his pock-marked and scarred face. His black hair worn slicked back from his high forehead. His mouth was narrow with thin lips, and he had a tendency to squint a lot, which gave the impression of quiet competence. Due to his stutter, he didn't speak much, lending credence to the impression of a studious, serious nature. That impression would be shattered once again on the day of May 31st, 1951. 24-year-old Robert Jenke was just trying to make a living. Working his job at a Warren, Michigan gas station, he was looking forward to spending time with his wife after his shift was over. Maybe the two of them could go out for dinner and catch a movie. Warren Irwin had other ideas. Entering the gas station, he held it up and, on the way out, he shot Robert in the back of the head as he made his escape. It wouldn't be until later that he would be tied to the murder. Making his way back to his mother's house, he laid low until June 8th. Mrs. Adeline Shaniga left her house on June 8th, 1951, to walk to the doctor's office in town for an appointment and then make a stop at the store. As she left, she waved goodbye to her son Cyril as he rode his bike up and down the road. As Cyril waved back, he had no idea that this would be the last time he would see his mother alive. There is no way to know how she crossed paths with Warren, but what is known is this. At 1 p.m., Adeline left her house on foot, headed to town. The doctor would later report that she never made it to his office. Shortly after she left home, the local sheriff, Laverne Robinson, drove past Adeline and an unknown man standing next to a car parked on the shoulder of the road. As he passed them, he looked into his rear view mirror and he saw the two of them, hands held, walk into the field next to the car. Thinking they were lovers on their way to a tryst, he gave no further thought to it until later. At 3 p.m., a local farmer, Wade Davis, would be called upon to help a stranded male stranger pull his car out of the ditch. Cyril Shanaga, thinking Adeline was visiting her mother, would not report her missing until June 14th. Her body would be found in the woods with a gunshot to the back of the head on June 15th. Her watch, diamond ring, and purse were missing. She had also been raped. She left behind 3 children, Marlene, age 15, Cyril Jr., 11, and Beatrice, age 7. A description of the missing items was given out, and Tobias Douglas, age 19, and a friend of Warren would step forward to identify Warren as the suspect. Warren had given Tobias's 11-year-old sister, Cleta, a watch as a gift. Tobias identified it as the watch stolen from Adeline. Once Tobias identified Warren, the sheriff and Wade Davis were also able to identify him as the man they had seen in the area where Adeline had been found. The sheriff would also identify the car as the one seen at the gas station where Robert Jenke had been murdered. A warrant was issued for Warren's arrest on June 19th. Hearing of the warrant, Warren escaped out the back door of his mother's home where he was holed up. Heading across town, he went to the home of 43-year-old Doris Myers. Myers' mother was friends with Mrs. Irwin, so he wasn't a stranger to her. Letting him into her house, he told her that his mother and sister had been in a horrible accident in Toledo, Ohio, and he needed a ride to the hospital to see them before they died. Being a compassionate person, Doris got in her car with Warren and headed toward Toledo. As they reached the outskirts of Toledo, Warren pointed a gun at her head and said, quote,
"We're going west. Drive."
Scared to death, the stenographer did as she was told. Along the way, she tried to signal for help with her eyes whenever they stopped. At the time, full-service gas stations were a thing, and as one station attendant washed their windshield, she thought she had succeeded in communicating her need for help. After washing the window, the attendant walked to the back of the car and appeared to be noting the license plate number. But no help was to come. When they reached Davenport, Iowa, the pair stopped for a meal. While Warren left to use the men's room, Doris made good her escape. She ran out of the restaurant and across the street. Running into a farm implement store, she told the men there she had been kidnapped in Michigan and to call the police and begged them to hide her. The men, thinking she was crazy, nevertheless did as she asked and hid her. Soon after she was hidden, Warren came into the store looking for her. Realizing now the woman probably was not crazy, the men at the store denied seeing her. Warren would pay a visit to other stores up and down the street before he gave up and left the area in Doris's car. When the police were called, Doris was taken to the local FBI office to give her statement. The hunt for Warren was on. After he gave up his search for Doris, Warren headed to the Davenport, Iowa airport. There, he chartered a private plane with cash stolen from Doris. I wonder how much that cost back in the day.
I was just thinking that. Probably not as much as we think. Because they didn't think of planes as, they weren't multi-carriers. So planes were like crop dusters and stuff like that.
Right.
And from get to point A to point B-ish? Yeah, I wonder how much that was.
Yeah.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, like here's a 20. Let's go.
Yeah. Well, 20 would have been a hell of a lot of money back then.
Yeah, it would have. A ton, right? We're in the late 40s. No, early 50s. That's a lot of money, I guess. All right. He took the plane to Chicago and disappeared in the dark underworld of the Windy City. The FBI eventually found the abandoned car at the airport and were able to trace him to Chicago. A multi-state manhunt was started, but to no avail. Warren was in the wind.
Why did he go to Chicago when he was taking her across country to go to a funeral, right? Or did I get lost somewhere?
Well, that was all a lie. Nothing had happened to his mom and sister. It was just a ruse to get him in the car and moving out of the state.
Oh, okay. So maybe we can make the safe assumption that that's what happened with the other woman. Is that why we're telling about the one that got away? The other woman was likely subject to a lie of some sorts of the same caliber.
Possibly, right? He's like, we just got to go. Well, the first lady he pulled a gun on, right? He's like, let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's desperate. He needs to move.
All right.
Go
on.
All right. Because they had no idea of where he was headed, police protection was put on the following people just in case he decided to get some revenge. Those people are Clyda and Tobias Douglas, Doris Myers and her parents, Robert Jenke's widow, Farmer Wade Davis, and Sheriff Laverne Robinson. Kind of reminds me of, the similarities between Irwin and Pacone are eerily similar.
Yeah, and the weird part is they both spent time at the same foster guy's farm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, so I wonder if Cassius wasn't as gentle with his hands as he was with his heart. Supposedly taking in wayward people. Maybe he was a little bit of a tyrant, and he made these boys snap. I don't know, just a theory.
Yeah, it's called tough love.
Yeah, right. Tough love. I make you snap and become a mass murderer, jumping around all over the place doing crazy crap.
Yeah, either he's going to straighten you out or you're going to get even worse,
Yeah. Look at the door. 50-50.
Right.
Cassius. 50-50.
I know, and I love his name. I love that name, Cassius.
I do too.
Yeah. All right. There is no record of how Warren left Chicago, but what is known is that on June 28th, 1951, Caroline Barker, 17, and her boyfriend Lawrence Gilbert, 19, were sitting in Larry's car at the Washington Monument. It was Caroline's birthday, and her parents were throwing her a surprise party at her uncle's house later that night. It was Larry's job to keep her busy while they set it up. Larry was in love with Caroline and knew that he wanted to spend the rest of his life with her. As his car had transmission issues, he had pulled over at the monument to see if giving it a rest would help. Taking advantage of the quiet night, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a ring. He asked Caroline to marry him. She said yes. And he slipped the ring on her finger. As he was slipping the ring on her finger, he noticed a man walk past the car. 10 feet away from the car, the man turned and walked back toward the car. With their attention focused on each other, both were surprised when the passenger door was wrenched open and the man slipped inside. Pushing Caroline over and holding a gun to her side, the stranger with the scarred face said, quote,
"Drive me to Virginia. I'm wanted by the FBI."
What should have been a happy memory for Caroline and Larry was about to be turned into a 48-hour nightmare instead. Larry started the car and they headed from Washington, D.C. towards Virginia. Due to the transmission issues, the car could only travel slowly in first gear. Well, that's not a great getaway car. Warren told the two, quote,
"Wouldn't you know it? I'd pick a lousy car for a getaway."
The car would make it 10 miles to Falls Creek, Virginia. Directing Larry to pull into some woods and park the car, Warren forced the two out at gunpoint. Pulling a roll of tape from his pocket, he made Caroline tape Larry's hands and feet. He then raped her while Larry was forced to watch. After the rape, he forced the two back into the car. The car was completely dead at this point, and all they could do was walk. So Warren walked behind the two of them with his gun pointed at their backs. They headed back to Washington, stopping at a store for a Coke. The two tried to signal the clerk they needed help, even though they had a gun held on them. The clerk, oblivious, and soon the trio were back walking the street. Coming to a fork in the road, Warren noticed a bus coming down one side, so he motioned to the other road with the gun and told Larry to walk that way. Caroline was coming with him. He warned Larry that if the police came looking for him before midnight, Caroline would die. Larry continued walking and Warren flagged down the bus. Hopping on the bus with Caroline, the two took off into the wind again. It would be 48 terror-filled hours before the two lovers would see each other again. Larry walked through the night until he reached the Washington, D.C. Police Department. Corporal Robert Kisner found him crying in the interrogation room at 1 a.m., waiting to tell his story, yet afraid to do so. At first, he could do nothing but stutter and cry. He had seen what Warren was capable of, and his new fiancée was in the killer's hands. Gently, Corporal Kisner pried the story from him, and Larry told about the party, about taking Caroline out of the house so it could be set up, about the kidnapping and the rape, how he walked through the night to try and save her, and how he didn't know where they were now. On one thing, Larry was firm, that nobody should start looking until midnight or Caroline would die. But the manhunt began anyway. While Larry was walking through the night and telling his story to Corporal Kisner, Warren and Caroline rode the bus to Washington, D.C. There, Warren rented a hotel room for the night, where he raped Caroline 4 more times. The next morning, the two caught a bus and headed toward Pennsylvania. Warren's mother's sister, Martha, lived there with her husband, George Brewer. Arriving early, they caught a movie as a way to hide out until dark. The two arrived at the Brewer home at 10:30 p.m. Martha and George were just getting ready for bed, and they were not expecting company. When George hesitantly opened the door, Warren pulled a gun on him and told him that he and Caroline were spending the night. Warren believed George had $5,000 and a car he could steal. As Warren sat up all night with his gun trained on Martha and George, bragging about his exploits, an exhausted Caroline fell asleep on the couch. She was awakened at 4 a.m. by Warren. He motioned George and Caroline to George's car, where he directed George to drive to Philadelphia. He had left a change of clothes in a bus locker there, and he wanted to retrieve them. Before they left, he told his Aunt Martha if she told anyone, he would kill George, her, and their 9-year-old son, Michael. Well, with a threat like that, Martha stayed silent. George quietly drove them to the Philadelphia bus station, and upon arrival, Warren sent Caroline to retrieve his belongings. When asked later why she didn't flee then, Caroline replied she knew that Warren would follow through with his threat to kill the Brewer family if she did. Warren had bragged about killing people before, and she believed him. Once Warren had his belongings back, he forced George to drive back to his house. And when they arrived, George entered the house first, and slamming the door in Warren's face, he, Martha, and Michael escaped out of the back door and ran to the neighbors to call the police. It was 6:30 in the morning. Seeing his relatives escape, Warren stole their car and headed back towards New Jersey. He did not get the $5,000 he was after, but he did get that car. The FBI was once again notified, and the hunt was back on. It was 12:30 in the afternoon when the pair crossed the Delaware River into New Jersey and were spotted by a patrol car. The officer recognized George's stolen vehicle and, seeing a male and female in the vehicle, turned around and gave chase. It was raining, and the road conditions were not ideal. Reaching a hunting preserve where the body of Charles Lindbergh's baby had been found in 1932, Warren lost control of the car. With the police getting close, he pushed Caroline out of the passenger side and told her to run with him into the woods. But instead, Caroline ran toward the police, who were firing at the fleeing Warren. Exhausted and sore, Caroline collapsed and was taken to the local hospital. She and Larry would go on to marry and have 2 children, and they both died in 2007, Larry on April 11th and Caroline on June 20th. Over 300 police and FBI officers would descend on the area in the manhunt for Warren. It was the largest manhunt in New Jersey history, next to the hunt for the Lindbergh baby. It was raining and the going on the ground was tough. The Civil War Air Patrol put planes up in the air to search for Warren. Joseph Narducci and Arthur Bowen were doing a flyover when they finally spotted the body at 1:30 in the morning. The 27-year-old robber, thief, rapist, and murderer, who was wanted in 12 states, had taken his own life by putting a bullet through his left temple as he lay in a patch of poison ivy. His mother heard of his death via radio, and at the time she said, quote,
"No matter what he has done, he is still my son, and I love him."
She would send money to New Jersey to pay for his burial, but would not attend the funeral herself. Wow. Could you imagine that being your son?
Heartbreaking, because, I would imagine no matter what your child does, you would still have love for them, but you would be mortified for whatever it was. That's right up there with losing a child. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
In this case, she did lose him also to death. But when you lose a child to crime, it's almost like a double indemnity, as if you would have lost the child at all. I don't even know how to explain that. That's super complex, but I totally can imagine the devastation. Like, what did I do wrong as a parent that my child did this?
Exactly.
Not that it was her fault, but totally racking your brain. Like, oh my God, that's got to be brutal.
Right. So, and I get it because, when you're detached from it, like we're telling the story, you think, oh my God, how, drop that person like a bad habit, but it is your flesh and blood. That was someone that you loved, right? You grew in your belly, you raised that child, and just a bad seed. And then also, she had to have heard from her sister what he did with them, threatened to kill them. And oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Just totally awful.
That's got to be hard to live with as a parent.
And, to make the decision to not even go to his burial, that says something right there. Here's money to bury him, but I can't do it.
But also suicide is still a difficult thing today. But back then, suicide was kind of like an embarrassment, a failure.
Right. And not only did her son do it, but her husband also committed suicide via a gun.
Yeah.
So this poor woman, she must have just felt cursed.
Yeah. That's a rough one.
It's heavy. That's a heavy story, man. Just nuts.
This guy Cassius might be a cool name, but I don't think he might have been a cool guy. On surface, he sounds like he was doing good deeds, but I don't know. 2 out of 100 doesn't seem like a big number, but when we're talking about mass murderers, that's a big thing to have happen twice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he touched a lot of lives and he changed a lot of lives, but there's 2 of them that clearly there was just really no hope for, no matter what you do.
Yeah, I get. Maybe it's luck of the draw. Maybe Cassius had a hand in it. I don't know.
Right.
Too much coinky dinky.
Yeah. Well, if any of you found this story informative and would like more, please give us a like and a share on Facebook and YouTube. We appreciate you, and we appreciate you spending time with us. So thank you, everyone. Have a great week, and we will see you back on Wednesday for Round Robin. Have a great week, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.